everybody, and welcome back to Puck on the Parkway. Uh, it's James Burley and Daniel Reben here talking Devils all the time. And boy, we've just hit a bit of a corner now. We were pretty gloomy last episode. I believe it was titled something like January Slump or January Blues, something like that. It was a fitting title considering just how poorly the Devils had been playing coming into the new year and after the holiday break. But seems as though things are picking up once again, and the start that was that last Wednesday game on the 22nd, 5-1 home win over the Bruins. They needed to knock their opponent out of the water, and that's exactly what they did. Followed that up with a road win over Montreal in overtime, and then hit the skids a little bit with a bad loss in Philadelphia, but then came back just 2 days later against that very same Philly team. And in many ways, Brendan Dillon brought the boom, and the Devils won 5-0. So that's where we are lately. But Daniel, first of all, how you doing, man?
Hey man, Devils starting to turn it up a bit. Winners of three of their last four. But me personally, I just went shopping. I got this new shirt from Dick's Warehouse is actually going. They're closing up, so they have a big sale at the Palisades Mall. So if you're in around Rockland County, hit that up. I mean, I got a bunch of stuff for like $55 total. So I'm chilling. I got a bunch of new clothes, so I'm feeling good, man.
Is that the same as Dick's Sporting Goods, or is this a different
Yeah,
place?
it's like
Okay.
a um warehouse that they like try to like sell like stuff that they want to get out. So
Okay.
they always put it on sale. But this they're closing down. It's gonna be I don't even know what they're gonna turn it into, but like everything's like 75% off
Is
extra.
it
So
just the location, or did something happen with Dick's that I
no,
didn't know about? Okay, okay.
it's just that location.
Because
But
that's like our last one, man. Modell's is going.
yeah,
Sports Authority is gone.
yep.
I think the last one we got.
So I got a bunch. I got a pair of golf pants, two golf shirts, two normal shirts, and a pair of joggers, and $55 for stuff that's normally like $60. I was
Hey,
like,
man.
yo, hey, do it. Let's go.
Hey, man. Shop the sales like Daniel Rebane, folks, and you'll be smiling as brightly as he is. So
Yeah.
let's just jump right into the Devils. We talked about January. It was bad. February starts tomorrow, and then their
Mm,
first game in that month is going to be on Sunday in Buffalo to see old friend Lindy Ruff and the Sabres, and then a couple more games against Pittsburgh. And they welcome Vegas to New Jersey, and then they end it in Montreal on Saturday, February 8th, before the Four Nations break. So four more games, and of
mm.
their last four, they've won three. Uh, Things have been picking up. Still not quite scoring goals at the clip they would like, with the exception of that Bruins and Flyers game where they won very big. Your overall thoughts on the way the team has turned things around in these last few games, especially with the absence of Jacob Markstrom and Nico Hischier?
Yeah, I think we'll touch on those two injuries a bit right after we talk about these games, but I've liked what I've seen for the most part. Especially I want to bring up Timo Meyer because, he's kind of starting to turn it up a bit. He was demoted to that third line with Dawson Mercer, but it seems like that demotion has been kind of a promotion in a way because it's allowed him to be a play driver for the most part. And we've seen some good plays out of him, good scoring chances as well. Some of them have been saved. Goalies are going to make saves, but his playmaking ability we saw in that Flyers game with a beautiful pass over to Dawson Mercer to make it, I believe it was 4-0 at the time. So I've liked what I've seen out of him. That third line with him, Justin Dowling in the center has kind of been their best line for the past couple of days, which is kind of interesting to see. Jack Hughes looking real good, even though he's dealing with that finger injury. Jesper Bratt as well, and then the D pairs also got shaken up. So all three D pairs got shaken up. Luke Hughes was playing with Kovacevic. Brendan Dillon is with Brett Pesci, and then Siegenthaler is back with Dougie Hamilton. I think the past couple of games, those three lines have worked really well on the back end. So. I don't, for me personally, I've liked what I've seen with four games left going into the break. If they can steal another, if they could go 2-1-1 in these last four, maybe even go 3 or 4 again, that's a real good thing going into this Four Nations break.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were talking about the lead up to this break is coming at a pretty important time for this team, considering, just where they were at the start of the season compared to where they've been through post 2024 and into January. It's not exactly where they want to be, but with the way that they've been playing lately, this shuffling of the lines seem to have gotten a bit more of a spark out from this Devils team, and that's exactly what you need to be seeing. I'm thinking back to the Ottawa game against the Devils in New Jersey. It's the last game I was personally at, and I'm thinking it's
Mm.
overtime. There's a face-off. Jack Hughes is on the ice. I think it was Mercer got forced out of the circle, and they go with Luke Hughes instead of Jack. And I'm thinking, well, this guy's got to have a hand injury or something if he's not taking this face-off. And the fact that we're talking about guys who aren't on the ice right now, Markstrom, Hischier. I know we haven't dived deep yet into just exactly what's going on with those two guys, but even the guys that are on the ice are going through stuff too. And I mean, I
Yep.
know that's always the reality with hockey, but people had been complaining Hughes not performing to the level that we'd like him to be. I just thought I'd provide a reminder to everybody that these guys are all battling through injuries throughout the season, some worse than others. And the fact that the Devils now have started to begin correcting these things with these injuries happening, with this adversity that they're now going through, I think speaks a bit to just how excited everybody is about this team and how everybody should stay committed to supporting these guys. Um, I think back to that Tuesday game against the Panthers a few weeks ago. That was a Tuesday, random Tuesday in January, and that place was packed, man. Just so many people there to see
Yep.
the Devils take on the reigning Cup champions. I mean, just a few seasons ago, I mean that would have been unheard of. But even though the team was going through a bit of a tough period, it's been great to see that the fans have this team's back.
Mm.
Uh, with Hischier out, with Markstrom out, fans are still there, and the Devils team performing with some wounded warriors out there, and they're still very much towards the top of the Metropolitan Division, and they've just started playing really good hockey again. They've got a vulnerable Buffalo team in front of them on Sunday. You have to imagine there's 2 points at the end of that, and then you get the Penguins, who are in, as Sidney Crosby said, desperation mode on the following Tuesday. That's a game that hopefully you can go get a point out of on the road, and then Vegas at home. I mean, that's going to be tough, but when
That's a
you're at
toss up.
home,
Yep.
when you're a good team and you're at home, every game you have to expect to be winning. So I think the Devils are in better shape than they were a week ago. That goes without saying. But I've been excited that they've gotten the best out of their best guys again. That's what Sheldon Keefe wanted to get from this team, and that is now what they are getting. I was surprised to see all those changes on the blue line. I wasn't surprised to see those changes with the forward core. They were in every game, but they were losing 3-2, 2-1, 1-0. The goals were the problem, right? It wasn't the structure, it wasn't the defense, but I think getting to send that message to everybody from Sheldon Keefe was a good idea. It's
Mm.
it's convinced guys like Luke Hughes, like Jonathan Kovacevic, like Brendan Dillon. There's another area of your game you need to reach in, and Dillon and Hamilton have been getting a lot of the criticism. I would say from most fans. The statistics, advanced statistics, you can choose to believe in them or not, have them as one of the more effective defensive pairings in the National Hockey League throughout this season. And while the return of Hischier to the lineup will mean that guys like Mercer are going to probably drop back down to the third line or so, it's been great to see guys like Timo Meier and Dawson Mercer step up in big moments. It was great to see Andre Palat get a power play goal with the first unit, although I think that it would make more sense for Meier to be the like-for-like replacement on the power play one with Hischier's absence. But I digress. Things have been working. Stefan Nason continues to be an absolute beast as a net presence on the power play. He's been the reason why they've been so successful and found more success lately. They went through a bit of a power play drought there, but they brought it back with a couple power play points in their last few contests. So I think that pretty much brings us up to speed on the last week or so of Devils hockey. Let's sink our teeth into these injuries now because they are important.
Mm.
Losing Markstrom for 4 to 6 weeks with an MCL sprain, you're just grateful that it's not a tear,
Yeah.
not something that he's going to need surgery for. Instead, it's about rehabbing and getting weight off of it, and bringing back muscle strength and all these things that are important for a goaltender. You need a goaltender to be agile. You need a goaltender to be able to drop down, move side to side. Having an MCL sprain is going to make that very difficult. So you need him to get his rest now. And while it sucks that he won't be able to participate with Sweden at the Four Nations, it's huge for New Jersey that he gets those 2 weeks off to recuperate. And as for Nico Hischier, we know it's an undisclosed week-to-week injury. Um, we know he sustained it, I believe, in that Montreal game, only played
Yep.
about 15 or so minutes in it, scored a goal in that game as well. Um, for me, he's as important a player gets for any organization in the National Hockey League, really. Um, I think that without him, the Devils are a much worse hockey team. The fact that they were able to figure it out and look so dominant on both sides of the ice against Philadelphia without Hischier, to me, that says this team can be in a place that they weren't in 2 years ago. Is that they have the foundation surrounding them that they almost didn't have uh, 2 seasons ago. When they were losing games last year, they were getting beaten. I remember that Devils team winning games that they deserved to lose. Now all I think about is the Devils losing games they deserve to win.
Yeah.
So for me, the structure, the foundation is better than it was. Maybe you give credit to Sheldon Keefe as a bit of a better coach than Lindy Ruff, is more in tune with what this team should be doing to be successful. But now it's about the best players performing, right? And we've seen that now in that last Flyers game, in that game, that nitty gritty win over the Canadians, and as well in that win over the Bruins. Didn't have it on the road against Philly, but a lot of it felt like, hey, this is a game that we could and should be winning. So that structure is there. That's exciting. But what hurts, though, and I'll bring up a stat about Nico Hischier, since they drafted him ahead of 2017, since the 2017-18 season, the Devils have 239 wins, 209 losses, and 55 OT losses with Nico Hischier on the ice. Without him, they have a 29 wins, 45 losses, and 11 overtime losses. So with him, and this is including some terrible seasons, they are above
Yeah.
NHL 500. Without him, they are an abysmally horrible hockey team. So I think that says enough right there, just the impact that this guy has on the ice, just this one lone guy. And then, I mean, we only have this season to choose from when we're talking about Jacob Markstrom, but I think just the eye test tells you alone how good that guy has been. Um, I mean, just the spectacular saves alone, right? He's kept the Devils in games that they arguably haven't deserved to be in. But with this injury now, he's dropped lower on the expected goals saved above expected list when compared to other goaltenders. But if I look at someone who's creeping up the list, MoneyPuck.com in 11th has Jake Allen as the 11th best statistic goalie. And that's with very few games played compared to the guys ahead of him. And then in 12th is Jacob Markstrom. I mean, that's as good as a goaltending tandem as you could have asked for going into the 2024-25 offseason for New Jersey. And I've just talked a lot there, Dan. So really, what has been your impression of the Devils without Markstrom? I know Jake Allen's been great. Had that shutout against Philly last time out, and then again without Nico Hischier, they were able to play a great 200-foot hockey game without him the other day. But the statistics show things are easier said than done without him on the ice.
Yeah, it's gonna be, they're gonna have to grind these next 4 games before the break because, you brought it up. I'll start with Jacob Markstrom. I mean, for me, he was probably our best player in January. Obviously the wins didn't, back him up, but man, he was doing everything to give this team a chance to get victories. And for him to go down like that, thank God it wasn't worse because it definitely did look a lot worse when his leg kind of twisted in the goal, it got stuck on the post and everything like that. So an MCL sprain isn't there's nothing to laugh off at, but 4 to 6 weeks isn't the worst thing, especially this time of year when they'll have 2.5 weeks off for Four Nations. And then the Nico Hischier, I mean, we talk about his impact on his team, every single episode. I mean, he before his injury, he led the whole league in faceoffs, like faceoffs taken, faceoffs won, and he was above, I believe, a 55%. So, I mean, his impact right there alone is something this team doesn't have, especially without Eric Haula, who was second on the team in faceoffs. So just imagine all those faceoffs, not there right now on the team. So you have Jack Hughes taking faceoffs, who he struggles a lot. Curtis Lazar has been up and down all season on faceoffs. Justin Dowling's there, but again, he's not known for his faceoff ability. So they're gonna have to grind up the middle of these next 4 games and see if they could get any wins out of it. And I said if they could get if they could get what is that, 5 points out of 8, I'd be fine with it. Um, but yeah, I think the big guys are gonna have to keep on stepping up, like a Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt, even though they might be dealing with some niggles here and there. They're still, Jack Hughes is still top 10 in points, even though people say he might be struggling. He's still top 10 in points with 60. And Jesper Bratt leads all Swedish people I saw, Swedish players in the NHL with points with 58. So I think, those guys are doing their thing. I think they just need to, play structurally sound defensively like they did against Philly in that home game, and the offense will eventually come like we saw. I mean, that fifth goal between Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt, my God, they had what's his name just out of position. You're like, if you just took a still picture of when Jack Hughes scored, you know, Fedotov was just on the wrong post. So it's just funny to watch, and they're just gonna have to take another step. So without the captain, and again, it's gonna be a grind. Maybe we'll see some moves here and there before the break, but this is the team they're gonna have to go with, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that Jack Hughes, that fifth goal. I love a 2-on-1 where you don't just make one pass, but you make two passes. Oftentimes, you don't have the time or space to pull
Yeah.
off both passes, but the goal rate of getting the goalie to move not once but twice is much higher. And before I continue on that point, I did just recrunch the numbers on the goaltending stats. Goals saved above expected per 60 among all goaltenders who have played at least 15 games this season. So generally all starters and
Mhm.
backups in the league. Jake Allen is third with goals saved above expected behind only Connor Hellebuck and recent payday recipient Logan Thompson of the Washington Capitals. I mean, that's good company to be in for Jake the Snake, and the Devils are lucky to have a backup goalie
Oh yeah,
with
well,
as much
let's
experience as him.
let's touch on him a bit because
Yeah,
obviously we coming into the season we were like a little hesitant on what he would do
a
as
lot
as
of
a
people,
backup.
including myself, were like Capo Kakinen had a better end to the season than he did.
Yeah.
If there's a goaltender they're going to bring back, a lot of us were saying we'd be happy with Jake Allen, but Capo Kakinen would have been the preferred choice.
And no fault to his own, but I believe before Jacob Markstrom got hurt, Jake Allen's last win I believe was in November before he stepped in and got that win. I forget when he got that, but it took a bit for him to get his first win, and that's no fault to himself because I believe is he up to four shutouts after yesterday the last game?
Four shutouts.
It's three or four. I know that,
When
which is
they've all been like 25 saves or
Which is
fewer
which
too.
is which is crazy. You're like Jake Allen's like he's got like 8 wins on the year, and half of them are like shutouts. So
Hmm.
I think what he's done the past couple of games, stepping in, he's getting the games now. It's all on him. He's not getting one game in 2 week span. He's playing three, 4, 5 in a row coming up. He's probably gonna play all 4 games this week. So. He's got the workload on his shoulders. It's on him, and obviously the players in front of him.
Yeah, Jake Allen, three shutouts this year. That's tied for third with a number of other goaltenders, including Jacob Markstrom, who's also
Yep.
got three shutouts. I believe that's one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10 other goaltenders have three shutouts this year. And they're in pretty good company if I read off some of these names. Only Connor Hellebuck, Jussi Saros, and Kevin Lankinen have more shutouts than Jake Allen or Jacob Markstrom this year. So not actually big numbers for shutouts to this point of the season, really, for a lot of these goaltenders. But the fact that Allen and Markstrom together are up there speaks volumes about this Devils tandem.
Oh, and
And
I think I saw
compared to last year, oh my goodness.
I think I saw a stat. It was like this is the most shutouts the Devils have had in a season since like 2018-19 or something like that. So, you know, they're getting goaltending this year, and that's exactly what fans and the front office wanted. They wanted goaltending league average, and right now they're playing way above league average, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah.
So, keep it
That's
going.
it's one less excuse that the fans can have if the
Yep.
Devils don't perform this year. It was the main excuse coming out of Devils fans' mouths from last year, and rightfully so.
Yep.
But to go back to what we were saying, that Flyers game, that the Devils won 5-0. I mean, there's just a lot to enjoy from that game, right? I mean, the Luke Hughes 2-on-1 with Jack, he
The
looks
look
off his
off.
brother and snipes it. and that starts like a good dialogue between them that everybody got to see. And unfortunately, I wasn't in the locker room after that game, but I was in the locker room after several of the previous games. All of them were pretty much losses or narrow victories, and you can already tell the vibes are different now.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily have to trust in vibes, but I believe vibes matter to a degree. If the Devils are enjoying this recent run more, they're going to play like it, and that's only good for this type of team, this young, fast team. You want those guys to be enjoying their game because they don't cut any corners the way these guys play, right? They get it and they go, and you want those guys to have a smile on their face in order to be successful. So that's a step in the right direction for sure.
Lastly,
Uh,
before we move on, I'll say
yeah.
it's rare in an NHL season that there won't be any waves to a season.
Hmm.
So, the Devils hit they were going down a bit and now they're starting to kind of creep back up. That's what most teams do. Obviously you don't see many seasons like the Boston Bruins a couple of years ago where they just said, "Oh, we're just going to win the whole season." Or what Washington's doing this year because what they're doing is winning for the most part. So, Devils have hit some low points, but it's always on them to, you know, rise back up. Just forget about the lows, forget about the highs, just keep it neutral, and they'll keep on waving through the season. And as long as you can head into the playoffs on a hot streak, that's all you can ask for.
Yeah, and if I can ease anybody's nervousness from what's gone on for the Devils this past month, if you put the Devils in the Atlantic Division, they'd be sitting in first place. So
Comfortably too.
they'd be a point ahead of the Panthers, and I think their schedule might be a couple games easier. If I look at the bottom of the Atlantic Division and compare it to the bottom of the Metropolitan
Yeah, because
Division,
I think third place has like 56 points.
yeah,
So
third place is the Senators on 58 points,
yeah.
and I mean, I'm actually loving how close this wild card race is going to be. Any one of like seven teams
Yeah, the
at this point.
Islanders. The Islanders said,
The
let's come back in this.
Islanders, they always do, right? Like we always say, this roster had no business being in the playoffs last year. It was a bunch of old guys and a
There comes
couple of,
Lou.
yeah, and Lou Lamoriello is making some questionable at best decisions with the front office, and then it turns out they go on a heater in January, February, and sneak into the playoffs. I think the Rangers are going to be in that discussion. I mean, you
I don't
can't
think
count
so.
out the Blue Jackets for how good they've been,
Yeah.
above people's
Oh,
expectations.
MVP.
Yeah,
MVP Zach Werenski. Oh my
Werenski,
God.
Werenski has been one of the more underappreciated defensemen in the NHL for a while. I'm glad that he's getting his flowers now. And what otherwise has been a tragic past few seasons to be a Columbus Blue Jackets fan, to be part of that organization, just so much loss, and not just Johnny Gaudreau
Yeah.
going past the several years now. So excited to see that they are still hanging on to one of those wild card spots. And then, I mean, Pittsburgh, they're only 7 points behind the Blue Jackets. The Flyers are level on points with the Rangers. Like, this is going to be a great race. The Devils don't have time really to say like this is going to be our wave where we have a bad period. That happens throughout the NHL for every team, right? Unless you're the Bruins from a year ago or 2 years
Yeah.
ago. Um, for me, this little moment the Devils are now having, they've won three of their last four. Seems like they're clawing out of that little rut that they dug for themselves. But it remains to be seen if they really have. So these
Yeah.
next four games for me are crucial.
Mm.
Again, if it doesn't go their way, they'll have the 2 weeks off. But I still think that these games really need to go the Devils' way for them to feel good about themselves going into that break. And with that said, let's speak a little bit more about the Hischier injury. I mean, I know we spoke briefly about what those things are like, but 43 points in 51 games this season. Um, Andre Palat took Nico's spot on the top power play unit. Dawson Mercer stepped into the top six center role, and we've been satisfied with what those guys have been able to provide. But assuming that Nico comes back after the Four Nations break, and assuming the Devils continue on this upward trajectory before that, just how excited should this Devils fan base be about what the post Four Nations break looks like for New Jersey? And then at that point, what other moves would you make? Because now there are some pretty big transfer trade rumors coming out now ahead of the March 7th trade deadline. And that'll give the Devils about 2 weeks to shop through the team and see what can help them. So assuming that a healthy Hischier comes back post Four Nations, what should this Devils team look like then? And where should they start to explore?
Yeah, I think we've talked about this a bit, but let me just say, obviously, hope Nico, rests up, comes back strong. He might even come back before the Four Nations. They said he was week to week. They were gonna see how he felt coming into this next week. So maybe he gets a game or two before the nation. But me personally, caution, let him get all the rest he needs because he's been that Selkie kind of candidate player this year, and I think he was probably maybe leaning as the favorite going into this Four Nations, at least second. But yeah, I think third line center. I think it's pretty obvious they need that depth, and you know, Dawson Mercer's kind of drawn back into the top six for now. But for an extended period of time without a Nico Hischier or a Jack Hughes down the middle, I think they need a guy that can play that third line, but also in a pinch could maybe draw into that second line center going forward. And we've seen some names pop up. I saw Ryan O'Reilly. Obviously, he's got a couple of years left on his deal. Um, but maybe we'll talk about it later in the show. The recent news about the cap going skyrocket later in the show. But Ryan O'Reilly's still producing even on a really underachieving Nashville team. And he takes faceoffs. He's that 200-foot guy. He could still produce. He'd be a guy I'd be very interested on what they would have to give up to get a guy like that, especially with Nashville maybe trying to kind of retool after a big offseason for them. Any other centers you would be interested in?
Well, I think one name that's been flown out a lot has been Brock Nelson.
Mm,
I think he would fit what the Devils are looking for pretty well. I'm just not sure if Lou Lamoriello would be okay sending him to a division rival.
yeah.
Um, and with the Islanders not out of a playoff push now, they've won six in a row, eight of their last 10. I think that they're gonna start to tighten up the reins on players like him. I I know Brock Besser was flown out there, not really a center option, but just another guy who you could add to your top six
Yeah, that'd be
skill
a winger. Yeah, it's a
and
top six winger.
be a winger. And there are other guys on the Devils who can slot into the center role. I know Eric Halla is injured. You expect him to come back at some point. He's been perhaps a bit disappointing as a third line center, and some folks have called for him to going forward be considered as the fourth. But I think there's a few different avenues for the Devils to explore in terms of boosting the squad in that way. And then of course, the Twitter trade experts are out again. I don't know what Montreal their fixation on on getting trades with. Maybe it's just
I just ignore them, man, because
I
they
know.
just be saying stuff just
Yeah.
because.
And I know, like, maybe it's just they're one of the biggest fan bases in hockey and they make trades with everybody, and it's just the only ones I'm seeing. But the insistence on using Seaman Nemitz as a trade bait to get Jake Evans and Joel Armia off the team, and I'm not saying that the Devils definitely won't trade Nemitz. We talked about it before. The comments he made, whether serious or not, I think that's a method the Devils can have in their back pocket. We have these great defensive prospects. If we really want to make a big splash, one of those guys would command a lot to come the other way. So
I got a bold prediction. Bold prediction, right?
let's hear it.
I think Jonathan Kovacevic would be traded before Simon Nemec.
Yeah, I mean,
And someone brought something up about, obviously Kovacevic is on an expiring deal. Why not see if you can get something off of him? Obviously you have Simon Nemec right there. You could just insert him on a cheaper deal. Um, why not? Maybe you can get that center. I don't know. I have a real hard time seeing them trade, Simon Nemec unless it's for like we'll get into like trade rumors a bit more, like or trade activity around the league. But like for a guy like Elias Pettersson, I'd be like,
Yeah.
okay, maybe Simon Nemec I could do for that. But yeah, I don't see him going anywhere right now. I see other players getting traded before him.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think it would hurt to see Kovacevic go just because of how important he's been defensively for this team. And every cup contending team needs one or two guys like him. But if I look at the Devils roster, I kind of do already have one or two guys like him, right? They've got Brett Pesce, they've got Jonas Siegenthaler.
Exactly.
Those are shut down guys. Um, and while it would suck to see a guy like Covey, who's been, you know, just the best surprise ever on the blue line this year, they could get something in return for him too. And you know, you don't sacrifice sending away a 2004 born second overall pick like Sima Nemech's. So I very much agree with you that that would be a better route to go, and I do believe that the Devils would exercise that idea before they would with Nemeth. They obviously have plans for him in the future,
Yeah.
um, even if he may be feeling a little bit unsettled in Utica at the moment. So, with that being said, there are trades going around the NHL, and
Oh,
there are big splashes.
oh.
I mean, everybody has been talking about the three. I mean, it's a three team deal, but really it was just the Chicago Blackhawks saying, "Yes, walk all over me, please." And I I I
Oh man.
I can't believe it now, but Mikko Rantanen and Taylor Hall are Carolina Hurricanes. Marty Natchez and Jack Drury are Colorado Avalanche. At first, I was like, "How do you let a guy like Rantanen go?" But with the rumors that with the cap going up, like you mentioned, him asking for 14 million supposedly is the rumor, and then he coast Carolina and says, "I would have taken a pay cut to stay in Colorado." I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know what's true and what isn't, but I do know that this makes Carolina a better team, and in some ways, it makes Colorado a better team. I think Marty Natchez is that's a guy that's a regular 30 plus goal scorer who's going to fit in nicely in Colorado. He's not going to have to be the guy who moves the needle on his line, which he often was in Carolina. If he's playing next to guys like McKinnon and he's got a
Yeah.
guy like Makar behind him, you know, Rantanen, Makar, McKinnon, that's a pretty good trio, but there's only one puck out there on the ice. Natchez is the kind of guy who's going to get into the offensive zone and wait until you find him to snipe it. Rantanen is more of a playmaker. I think that's the kind of guy that Carolina needed. It didn't work last year with Jake Gensel, but there's levels to this, man. Rantanen is that level higher. And with the cap going up, the opportunity to re-sign a guy like that becomes very, very real in the post or in the off season, excuse me. And then Taylor Hall's comments about, yeah, now I'm on a winning team. It
Oh,
feels good.
shocker. Shocker.
I mean, the sky is blue, man. He loves going to good teams and saying I was on a bad team before this, but I mean, we love Taylor Hall in New Jersey for what he was able to provide in that 2017-18 season. And you just hope that he didn't find the perfect fit in Carolina and regains that form and brings them to playoff supremacy, which they have missed since 2006. So I want to get your thoughts overall on that big trade and what that means for the Devils, given that Carolina are going to be in the division, what it might mean for Colorado as a big cup contender, and if that indicates that we're going to see more blockbuster trades before the deadline on March 7th.
Yeah, I'll say this, all the Metro teams are going to be real active these couple weeks heading into the deadline. I mean, oh my God. We'll get to the Philly one next, but yeah, Carolina when I saw Mikko Rantanen's name pop up, my jaw dropped. I was like, whoa. I mean, like I kind of knew he would potentially get moved, but man, did I not see that for Carolina. So they pulled that out the hat. Um, but I'll say this right now, until they prove me wrong, I think he's a rental. I think he's a rental. I think Rantanen goes to UFA. So I think this push is just for them going for the cup like they did last year with Gensel. Obviously, they made an offer for Gensel, but it wasn't even close to what, he wanted. So now you're gonna tell me that they're gonna offer, Mikko Rantanen, even with the cap going up, you're gonna tell me the Carolina Hurricanes are gonna offer Mikko Rantanen 14 million a year? I don't see it. I don't see it. I think he goes to UFA. Maybe they prove me wrong, but for now, I think this trade was big time for Colorado because one, you have Natchez under contract for a couple more years at 6.5, I believe it is, and they're gonna have to pay one of Mikko Rantanen or one of Kel Makar. I think that decision is very easy to make.
No brainer.
Um, so now I think you take a bit of a step back from Mikko Rantanen to Natchez, sure. But I think, Marty Natchez is a capable 90 to 100 point guy on Nathan McKinnon's wing. No offense to Miko Rannon. I think a lot of his success came down to him and having Nathan McKinnon right, you know, as a center. Obviously, he's a really good player, top 10 player probably in his league. But I think Marty Natchez could become close to the same thing, be a Miko Rannon light. Obviously, he's not as big, he's not as physical, but Marty Natchez is a player for himself. He was this year, he was Carolina's best player, points wise. Obviously, he came down a bit after a very hot start. But Marty Natchez is no slouch, and I think he could be a 40 goal scorer on
Absolutely.
Nathan McKinnon's wing. And by the way, this move helps Colorado open up another $1 million in cap space. They're not done. Like this move really helps them going into the deadline. And even if they don't make a move and they think Gabriel Landeskog's ready to come back, then now they're able to activate him off of LTIR. But I think this sets up Colorado really good in the future. And I'll say this, if Miko Rannon doesn't sign in Carolina, boy, did they make
Mhm.
the wrong. Well, all right. If he doesn't re-sign there and they don't win a cup, boy, did they make the wrong move. But for me, this is a rental. They're going for it. They've gone for it the last couple years and it hasn't worked out. But I think this is the year Carolina said, we're going all in.
Yeah, and you know what? I think compared to the moves they made in previous seasons when they've tried to bolster up before the playoffs, I think this is definitely a bigger move than that. And I think it has to be with how tight things are in the Eastern Conference. And
Yeah.
you know, if you told Carolina and Carolina fans before the season started, hey, the Rangers are going to kind of be terrible for most of the season, I think they'd all be saying, "Oh, great! So is anybody going to challenge us for this division?" And now the Washington Capitals are
Running
two or
away with it.
2 or 3 steps ahead of the Hurricanes, who are probably a full step ahead of the Devils.
Yeah.
So I think that they really needed to make that extra push to be successful, and for them, it's going to be a matter of time to see whether or not it pays off. I'll be really, really excited to see what that team looks like. But I'm also going to be incredibly nervous considering what that might mean
No, they're a good
for New
team.
Jersey.
They're a good team.
And they were already pretty darn good
That
before
that's
that.
who we're gonna play in the playoffs, by the way. That's round one. I
It's
think,
pretty much guaranteed too.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So I mean, I think that pretty much that's news around the league right
whoa,
now
whoa,
in
whoa,
terms of
whoa. We
in
got we got
terms
a
of
we got a bit more. We got a bit more.
what am I missing?
The
Am
Flyers
I missing?
move.
Am I
The
missing?
Flyers moved from last night.
Am I missing Vancouver too?
And we'll touch on Vancouver a bit because there's a lot still going on out there. But the Flyers made a move last night. Shockingly, to be fair, if you look at this move as a Flyers fan, you can either look at it one or two ways. They traded Joel Farabee and Morgan Frost to Calgary for um what's his name? The Russian. Ku uh, can you look up his name? I'll move
I'm
on.
I'm
But
I'm looking it up now. I just wanted to say it's Frost playing for the
Kuzmenko,
Flames is pretty
Kuzmenko,
funny. But now, yeah,
Kuzmenko.
Andrei Kuzmenko. I mean,
Kuz-
that's Farabee, Kuzmenko, Frost. I mean, we're talking about guys who, I mean, almost indistinguishable in terms of the level at which they play. But continue.
I mean, three former first round picks are trading hands here. Frost, I feel like, Philly's giving up on two players very quickly, and I think they'll thrive in a new system in Calgary, getting away from John Tortorella. Um, and I just don't. I see it only as Philly's trying to clear cap for bigger moves potentially in the future. Because I believe it was Farabee who was making 5 mil for the next 4 years or whatever it was. But I just think they're giving up on those two guys way too early. They're both RFA or they're both 24 and 25. It seemed a bit weird to me. To get and by the way, Mitchkov is struggling under Tortorella right now.
Yeah.
Just got benched again in the second period yesterday. They had a big shouting match on the bench. So what did Danny Briere say? He said, "Yeah, go get me another Russian that does kind of the same things as Mitchkov."
Hmm.
So if if John Tortorella doesn't like Mitchkov, oh my God, he's gonna hate Kuzmenko. I mean, and now they're gonna be on the same line, by the way, because they played with each other in SKA back in 21. So gonna be interesting times down in Philly. Let's see how that goes out. But let's move on to the last news around the league, Vancouver. It came out, I believe the GM said it, Jim Rutherford, that he confirmed the rift between Elias Pettersson and JT Miller. And that, me personally, that's kind of crazy that you come out and just confirm it. You're just like, yeah, we're dealing with a problem between two of our best players. JT Miller didn't seem to like the comments after, I believe, the next game after that. We've talked about this situation multiple times, but what do you think about all this now?
Well, I think it was very clear for a while that neither Pedersen nor Miller wanted to be upfront about what was going on behind the scenes, and that's their right to do that. You know, they're players on the team; only they know what they're dealing with. But then for voices outside of the locker room to continue, um, making it known, uh, it forces the powers that be, such as the coaching front office, to make these sorts of statements that the players don't like. And I think it was only a matter of time before that hit the boiling point, and that one of those guys was going to be shipped out, if not both.
Yeah.
And for Vancouver's sake, you know, for as good as a guy like Lankinen has been in goal, this season has kind of been a wash with goaltending injuries and with the inability to play to their level. Because Vancouver last year were maybe a bit of a surprise, but they were that good at playing a team game, right?
Hmm.
They just were.
Yeah.
And for it to have, the SHIT, for it to have hit the fan this hard this
Oh,
season, I mean, I feel like Devils fans could pretty much relate, considering what
I
happened
mean, we
last year.
just we just stunk last year. I
Yeah,
mean, this is
the
them just crumbling
the
like
added
from inside out.
the added difference is not only are they worse than what the Devils looked like last year, there was obvious issues, excuse me, and that the Devils didn't have proper goaltending. There were injuries throughout the team for most of the season, and now you look at it in Vancouver, like yeah, there's a pretty significant goaltending injury, but outside of that, they kind of have had the pieces to be able to say, all right, let's deal with
Hmm.
adversity, and they've gotten good goaltending.
Yeah.
It's not like they haven't.
I mean, they're a good
So
team, like
that
talent wise. They're really
they are
good.
they should be towards, if not at the top of the Pacific Division, and they honestly have now got to make a lot of really difficult decisions. And I don't see a world where a lot of teams are going to be you know more excited to get Miller versus Pedersen. Both of those
Ye-
guys will find landing spots. They're both
Yeah.
great NHLers, both elite guys for sure. But I mean, problems have seemed to follow Miller where he goes. Um, Pedersen, I mean, has only played with one team in his career, but this is a newer issue for him, and I think that people around the league are starting to recognize that. I'm not sure where those guys end up. I don't. I You'd have to convince me really hard that either of them become a New Jersey Devil,
Yeah.
and I don't believe they will. But there's been talks, at least from my colleagues at the WFUV radio station, those who have more ears into the Rangers camp seem to believe that there could be talks between Miller and a reunion with the team that drafted him in New York. So
Yeah.
it's an
I was
absolute disaster in
yeah.
British Columbia.
I'll say this. Rumors have linked JT Miller to the Rangers, and I think they'll eventually get a deal done. It sounded like they had a deal close to completion and it kind of fell apart due to conditions on a certain pick. Um, but then you look at Elias Pettersson, he's been linked with Buffalo and Columbus. So I think there's a real scenario where they just blow it up and just say we're gonna get rid of both these guys. We'll see what happens, but I didn't bring this up. Nobody on Devil's Twitter brought this up, but you know, some people have brought up now that even with the cap going up in 27, people in the real media have brought up Quinn Hughes to New Jersey in 2027. And I mean
It's exciting.
that's always been the dream of of New Jersey Devils fans to reunite all three of the Hugheses. And if they can, pull that off beforehand, that'd be great. I think, they'd make a trade in a heartbeat to get a guy like Quinn Hughes. Um, but if it is that he just signs with the Devils in the summer of 2027, boy, will they throw the parade already. Like Devils fans will be outside of Prudential Center throwing a big old party. And I just want to talk about his season this year a bit because he's coming off of his first Norris season last year, and he's just taken another step. Like I think there's three guys in the NHL right now. We talked about in Columbus, uh Zach Werenski, Kale McCarr and Quinn Hughes. Those three guys this season, you know, are on a different planet. And Quinn Hughes is doing it, and he's literally keeping his team in the playoffs right now in the Western Conference. They're in a wild card spot. He's doing something that hasn't been done since Erik Karlsson did it when he was on San Jose before he was traded. And that's as a defenseman, lead your team in scoring by more than 20 points. And he's on pace to do that right now. So, Quinn Hughes is that guy. He might be on the shorter side, but when you have that talent, you find ways to be good. And even defensively, he's one of the best defensemen in the league right now. And his skating is magnificent. We've seen it with Luke and Jack. He's as good. His vision to find passes up the ice from his own, goal line to find a guy at the blue line and make that pass is ridiculous to say the least. So, if the Devils can ever pull it off earlier, I'd always, I would always find a way to try to do that. But man, 2027 can't get here any earlier because I think if any of those, I think if both of them are traded, like Elias Pettersson and JT Miller, I think that kind of just opens the door and the Devils kind of, knock that door down in 27 and make that official. But, we're still 2 years away. That's still a fantasy for fans to bring up. But hey man, media's talking about it now. So that's why I brought it up. ESPN's talking about it, TSN's talking about it. So all I'm saying is my message to Vancouver fans, your front office better be treating Quinn Hughes right. Because if not, he's coming to New Jersey. And now the Hughes family doesn't have to travel back and forth. They get one stop in New Jersey. So any thoughts on that before we move on to other things we have to talk about before we get on out of here?
Well, look, I mean, that's you're talking dream come true territory type stuff
Yeah.
there. And I'm not about to hang my hat on it and say it's definitely going to happen or
No,
definitely won't
yeah. It's,
happen.
it's not a guarantee, but I mean,
Far,
whew,
far from it. But I would be more than like it's already like kind of a treat to have two brothers on one team, and let
yeah.
alone two star players. And then you arguably would add the best of the three, in Quinn
Yeah, right now,
Hughes.
currently, yes.
Yeah.
Currently, yeah.
So I mean, I think that would be exciting for just about anybody. Uh, Even if you're not a fan of the Devils, that would be something that you'd say this is something worth mentioning about New Jersey and noticing about them, which I think is always exciting. And I mean, we're talking about arguably the best D man in the game right now. Like I think it's genuinely between him or Cale Makar, and
Yeah.
and they're in a league of their own, and then there's everyone else.
He might
So
he might finish top three in MVP voting this year just
yeah,
because how bad the team around him has been. And, I mean, I
that
just
could
can't
also hurt him in the voting as well.
I can't like talk even it's just like
What do you have? 70 assists last year?
I love the player. That's all I'll say. I love the player. He's so good.
Yeah, he is that good, and he deserves that type of praise. And I genuinely do believe he would make the team that much better. He would make any team better.
Yeah.
It just stinks that his team stinks now, and I think that, ironically enough, could help him in the MVP race. It could also hurt him. So, that's I think that's now we're up to date on news around the league.
Yes.
So let's talk about some news around other leagues that pertain to the New Jersey Devils. I mean, NCAA news. I think Mikhail Yagorov, the goaltender for BU, posted, I mean, a great performance against Boston College in that game
What a
uh,
weird situation,
last
by the way.
week. He takes a rookie lap before the game. It was a few seconds before the official NCAA rules allow players to come and skate on the ice. So they took a penalty to start the game. They give up a goal on that penalty.
That was
And
the
you
only
take the
goal. That
yeah,
was
it
the
was the
only
only
goal.
goal in a 1-0 game. I mean, credit to
Well,
BC
empty netter,
and yeah,
but yeah,
sure, but credit to BC for a well fought contest as well. They're one of the best teams in the country every year. They are, and
yep.
BU, while not quite as good on paper this year, uh, still went up against Pro and Leonard and looked pretty darn good. And Yegorov has been deserving of another go at it in between the pipes, and he's going to be starting. I believe that's tonight or tomorrow.
Yep, in a
Um,
couple hours. Yep.
under Jay Pandolfo, our old friend. So that's been exciting. What have you enjoyed getting to watch about Yegorov?
Yeah, I'll just, plug Trey Matthews pod, Locked On Devils. He had him on for an interview, and right after that, news came out that he was leaving Omaha in the USHL to join up with Boston University for the second half of the season. I kind of like that for college hockey that, guys can enroll halfway through the year and if there's injuries, and we saw this last year with Chase Cheslock from the same Omaha Lancers. He joined up at St. Thomas, and this year he's having a really good sophomore year over there with the Tommies. But back to your Groff and Boston University, I think with uh, their goalies struggling, I feel like I didn't know why they made this move. I think it's because they were struggling so much, but he stepped in so seamlessly with his Omaha pad still. Like he was still getting his BU equipment under wraps. So maybe he'll have him on tonight. But you know, I agree with Jay Pandolfo. What's the doorman doing? What are you doing letting him on early? Like that seems like an inside job to me. Boston College letting him on the ice early. So it kind of sucks that's the only goal he gives up in the game. But other than that, he was making timely saves. He was making pad saves, blocker saves. He was going cross crease to make some saves. I mean, he looked the part for a guy that's just 18 years old, a Russian who's only been in the US for a couple of years now. His English is pretty good for a guy that's only been here for 2 or 3 years. He could be something special in the next couple of years. I think, he had the real opportunity this year to cement his place at BU for the next couple of years, but I'm really interested to watch his development under Jay Pandolfo, and BU is always good at recruiting, so they're always bringing in new guys every year, good freshmen, and now with this CHL NCAA agreement that certain players could come over from the Canadian leagues, we'll see how good these bigger teams get with a new pool of players. So Yegorov's going to start tonight in his second start. I'm really interested to watch him going forward. And if you have ESPN Plus, all the games for Hockey East are on there. So another reason to have ESPN Plus. I'm gonna be tuned in every week to be watching him.
Yeah, and I think for good reason. I mean, we talk about Devils goaltending. It's been pretty good right now, but I wouldn't expect Markstrom or Allen to be around for very long. I think it's very valuable if you've got the time tonight and moving forward to check out a BU game and you've got ESPN Plus. I'd do it. There's a really, really high chance that this guy sticks with the Devils organization and at least gets a chance to strut his stuff in Utica, if not in New Jersey, in a very short amount of time going forward. Um, I know there's some other prospects that you wanted to highlight. I think before we dive into them, let's talk about Arseny Gritsyuk because he is now injured for a number of weeks. Same deal as Nico, week to week, but it seems as though it's going to be a minor thing for a guy that a lot of Devils fans either expect to come to North America at the end of this year or sometime next year. So can we expect that to be disrupted by this injury? What should the plan for Gritsyuk be going forward? And then we'll finish off with some other prospects.
Yeah, it kind of sucks because he started to get back in his offensive production kind of was dipped a bit, but it was coming back up and get this injury, it kind of disrupts things. I was really hoping that he would put up his first 50-point year before he came over to North America, but if he's going to be out 3 weeks, probably not going to do that. I believe the KHL season, regular season, ends at the end of February or like really early March, like the first week of March. So he's projected to be back halfway through February. So I would say he's probably not going to get that, but he's done everything he's lived up to be, or he's that sniper. He's gonna score goals. He's actually been a big playmaker this year as well. So, you know, I think there was a new thing that came out that KHL contracts are signed through May now instead of the end of their season, which kind of sucks. So possibly, probably not seeing him at the end of this year. Um, but anyway, he'll be here in 2025, whether that is at the end of the season or at the beginning of next year. But moving on, we actually have more injuries and both of them are from this year's draft class. Let's see, what's his Kasper Pikkarainen he was one of the second round picks this year from Finland. Actually came over to the WHL and was gonna play for Red Deer. Only has played one game this year, and he was already dealing with a lower body injury before then. Played one game and hasn't played since. Coming out of Red Deer, it sounds like he's been shut down for the year. So wasted season for him, which kind of sucks because he looked like a guy like Herman Traff, kind of the same build. And we've seen what Traff has done already this season, kind of upping his stock a bit more in the Devils organization. So kind of sucks for Pikkarainen. I don't know what he'll do next year if he stays in the WHL because he was only on loan from his home team in Finland. So we'll have to see what happens there. And then also Max Graham, who I believe was a sixth round pick, captain of the Kelowna Rockets. He's also done for the year. He had knee surgery last week. Kind of sucks for him as well because he was over a point a game playing on the first line. And Kelowna was kind of up and down this year. They had a real good start, but since then they kind of lost a bunch of games. They traded away two of their best players. Tija Ginla, I believe, also was ruled out for the year with a knee injury earlier in the year. So kind of sucks for him because he was out. He was going to have a career year. And it's also interesting for him because his rights with the Devils expire in 2026, but he is out of eligibility in the CHL. So it's going to be interesting to see where he goes. Maybe he's one of those guys that makes the leap to college hockey next year, or maybe he signs with the Devils and plays in Utica or Adirondack. Going to be interesting to keep an eye on him. He's a projected fourth liner, but he's got that offensive flair to him. He fights. He throws hits. He's a leader. He's a captain at Kelowna this year, assistant captain the last 2 years, I believe. So he's got that leadership to him. It's going to be interesting to see what the Devils come up with for his plan for next year. But kind of sucks for both those guys that their seasons are done a bit early.
Yeah, obviously you never want to you know, for us fans of the Devils, you never want to see guys who are still trying to make their way up to the professional ranks, miss out on some opportunities here and there. But the good news is that both of these guys are still only just within their draft class from this past year. They're
Mm.
going to be back. They'll eventually get back to healthy and playing in the W. Just hope that these injuries don't curtail them long term. Yeah, we've got 4 games now before this Four Nations break. The Devils have started to climb out of that rut, although, they could undo that good work with 4 bad games going into the break. But this break's going to come at a good time. You hope that guys like Jesper Bratt and Jack Hughes, knock on wood, cross your fingers, stay healthy during this tournament
Yeah.
and can play good hockey and can come back from it, having won something perhaps. So this comes at a good moment for this Devils team, but it still remains to be seen. Can they go into the break on a good note, and then they come out of it strong and finish the season well and give themselves a good position going into the playoffs? Is that everything we needed to get through today, Dan?
I believe so. Unless you want to talk about Yanni Gord just being out for the rest of the year, or
Uh, I'm not
nah,
sure how
that
much
was a joke. It was a joke. It was a
that.
joke. But yeah, he just announced that he had sports hernia, so he'll be out 5 to 7 weeks.
Well, hopefully, you feel better, Yanni Gord. Unfortunately, it's not super relevant for us, but moving forward, we'll keep an eye on things as well in that camp. But that is all the time we have this week for Puck on the Parkway. For Daniel Rebane, I've been James Burley. Hopefully, the Devils can continue this run into the final four games before the Four Nations break, but we will wait and see. We'll catch you next time on Puck on the Parkway. Thank you guys so much for listening.
Peace.